The boardroom smelt like money, leather chairs, fresh coffee, and the faint cologne of men who'd never missed a mortgage payment. 16 investors sat around a polished glass table on the 47th floor of a Chicago skyscraper, and one of them was laughing. "No offense, kid, but we don't need tech support in the pitch," the man said, waving dismissively toward the corner. "Just keep the Wi-Fi running." The young man standing by the projector, 27 years old, wearing a company polo and khakis, didn't flinch. He just nodded and adjusted the laptop one more time. His name was Devin Hayes, and in 9 minutes, he was going to flip this entire room upside down. The senior vice president at the front, silver hair, Patek Philippe watch, smiled at the investors. "Gentlemen, let me show you why this acquisition is the smartest move your fund will make this year." Devin stood quietly, hands folded. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. Subject: U.S. Copyright Office. Registration confirmed. D. Hayes. He slid it back into his pocket and waited. And that's when everything changed. Before we go on, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I love seeing how far these stories travel. It was 3:18 p.m. on a Thursday in September 2024. The meeting was scheduled to end at 3:45. 27 minutes to close a $410 million deal. Devin had been at Titan Grove Capital for nearly 4 years. He'd started as a temp, hired to install printers and run cables through drop ceilings. Somewhere along the way, he'd become indispensable. He set up every major meeting. He made sure the presentations didn't crash. He kept the systems running. And nobody noticed when he started writing code. The conference room stretched across the entire west side of the 47th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline, the Willis Tower, the lake beyond it, September sun catching the glass and steel. The table seated 20. Today it held 16 investors, plus 2 Titan Grove executives, Roger Pemberton, Senior Vice President of Strategic Acquisitions, and his assistant Lauren, who sat near the door with a leather portfolio. Devin stood by the display screen, a silent fixture in a room full of voices. Roger was on slide 9, projected revenue, margin growth, market capture. The investors were engaged but restless. They'd heard pitches before. What they wanted was proof. A woman in the center of the table raised her hand, mid-50s, sharp suit, wire-rimmed glasses. Her name was Claudia Voss, and she managed a fund worth $1.2 billion. "Roger, we've seen the slides," she said. "Show us the platform." Roger smiled. "Absolutely, that's why we're here." He turned toward Devin without looking directly at him. "Devin, pull up the demo." Devin stepped forward and tapped 3 keys. A login screen appeared on the 65-inch display. Roger gestured broadly. "This is Optics, our proprietary wealth management system. It handles portfolio tracking, risk assessment, automated rebalancing, client reporting, compliance monitoring." "Can it do all that live?" a younger man interrupted. He was maybe 38, wearing a black suit and no tie. His name was Kyle Brennan. Roger paused. "I'm sorry?" "Live. Can you show us real workflows? Not slides, not mock-ups, the actual system." Roger's smile tightened. "Of course, I'll walk you through." "Have you used it?" Kyle asked. Silence. "Have you," Kyle repeated, "personally used this software?" Roger cleared his throat. "I've been thoroughly briefed by the development team. I know the platform inside and—" "Let him do it." Everyone turned. The speaker was an older man at the far end, late 60s, gray beard, weathered face. His name was Martin Kirby, a legend in private equity. When he spoke, people shut up. He nodded toward Devin. "The IT kid, let him run it." Roger blanked. "Martin, Devin's here in a support role. He's not familiar with the strategic context of—" "I don't care about strategy," Martin said flatly. "I want to see if the damn thing works. If your tech guy can't demo it, that's a red flag." The room went still. Roger glanced at Devin. There was irritation in his eyes, maybe something sharper. "Devin, can you walk them through the dashboard?" Devin looked at him, then at the investors, then at the screen. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. He stepped up to the keyboard. The clock on the wall read 3:21 p.m., 24 minutes left. On the credenza next to the laptop sat Devin's employee badge, laminated, clipped to a lanyard with his title printed in gray, IT Support Technician. Beside it, his phone screen lit up briefly with another notification, the preview line visible for just a second before it dimmed. Licensing Agreement, Final Draft, Feldman Legal Group. Nobody saw it. Not yet. Devin's fingers moved across the keyboard. The login screen dissolved. What replaced it was a sleek interface. Dark theme, live data feeds, modular panels updating in real time. One of the investors sat up straighter. Devin didn't speak immediately. He maximized a panel, scrolled through a drop-down menu, selected a sample portfolio. "This is the main client dashboard," he said. His voice was steady, calm. "Real-time asset allocation, performance metrics, risk analysis. Everything updates every 15 seconds. He clicked a tab. A three-dimensional chart appeared, interactive, rotating as he moved the mouse. Standard deviation, Sharpe ratio, beta coefficient, all calculated automatically based on current holdings. You can filter by asset class, sector, time horizon, or custom tags. He opened a side panel. A notification feed scrolled past. Alerts, triggers, flagged items. Built-in compliance monitoring. Tracks wash sales, concentration limits, margin requirements, flags violations before they become problems. Claudia Voss leaned forward. "Can it integrate with other systems?" Devin nodded. "API supports REST, GraphQL, and SOAP. We've built connectors for Salesforce, QuickBooks, Schwab, Fidelity, Bloomberg. Custom integrations take about 48 hours. Kyle Brennan spoke up. "What about reporting?" Devin clicked a button. A dialog box appeared. White label PDFs, Excel exports, or live dashboards. This generates a quarterly compliance report in about 20 seconds. SEC ready, footnotes included. He clicked Generate. A progress bar filled. A download link appeared. Encrypted. Can be emailed or pulled via secure link. One of the men at the table glanced at Roger. Roger was staring at Devin, jaw tight. Martin Kirby folded his arms. "How long have you been working with this platform?" Devin hesitated. "Just a beat." "About 2.5 years." "Doing what?" "Building it." The room shifted. Subtle, a few backs straightened, a couple of glances exchanged, but it was there. Claudia Voss tilted her head. "You built this?" "Parts of it," Devin said carefully. "Which parts?" Devin met her eyes. "The automation engine, the API layer, the compliance module, the reporting generator." Silence. Roger cleared his throat, louder than necessary. "Devin has been a valuable contributor to the implementation process, working under the direction of our contracted development firm, Apex Solutions, based out of—" "I wrote it," Devin said. Roger stopped mid-sentence. Devin turned to face the table. "Apex delivered the first version 18 months late and full of bugs. It crashed under load. The API didn't work. Compliance flags were triggering false positives, so I rewrote it." Claudia set down her pen. "And you're listed as IT support." The words landed like a gavel. Kyle Brennan let out a sharp breath. "You're kidding?" "No, sir." Martin Kirby started to smile. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who just realized the game had changed. "Keep going," he said. "Have you ever seen something like this where you live? I'm curious how you'd have reacted. Let me know in the comments." Devon continued. He opened the automation module, a flowchart interface with drag-and-drop nodes, logic branches, conditional triggers. This is a rebalancing workflow, he said. Runs every morning at market open. Checks all portfolios against target allocations. If drift exceeds 2%, it generates trade orders and routes them for approval. If drift is under 5% and within risk tolerance, it executes automatically. One of the investors, a woman in her 40s with short blonde hair, spoke up. Executes automatically? Yes, ma'am, with safeguards. If the system detects abnormal volatility, flash crash, circuit breaker, fat finger trade, it halts and alerts the account manager. How many portfolios can it handle at once? Tested up to 60,000. Average execution time is 0.9 seconds per trade. Someone whistled softly. Devon pulled up another workflow. This one's for tax loss harvesting. Scans holdings for unrealized losses, matches them to gains. Schedules trades to maximize deductions without violating IRS wash sale rules under Section 1091. Claudia Voss leaned back. Who programmed these? I did. Roger stood abruptly. His chair scraped loudly. All right, I think we've seen enough of the technical. Sit down, Roger, Martin Kirby said. Roger froze. Sit down. Roger sat. Martin looked at Devon. Keep going. Devon pulled up a screen showing commit logs, rows of code updates, each one timestamped, tagged with a username, dhayes_dev. This is version control history, Devon said. Every change, every module, every bug fix goes back 29 months. He scrolled slowly. Hundreds of commits, thousands of lines of code. Kyle Brennan pointed at one. What's that? March 12th, 2 years ago? Rebuilt database indexing. Query speed improved 82%. Devon clicked it. The diff showed 214 lines deleted, 391 added. The original system was doing full table scans on every query, Devon said. I rewrote it to use indexed lookups and caching, cut server costs by half. Claudia stared at the screen. Then at Roger? Then back at Devon. And nobody knew you were doing this? They knew the platform got better. They didn't ask how. A woman near the door, mid-30s, auburn hair pulled into a ponytail, pulled out her phone and started typing. Her name was Jessica Tran, an analyst for one of the smaller funds. Within 60 seconds, a message landed in a Slack channel called #TitanGroveDD. Something's happening in the pitch. IT guy is running demo, knows way more than he should. Pemberton looks like he's going to explode. 3 people read it immediately. One was in a cab. One was in a hotel room 2 blocks away. The third was in the hallway outside, waiting to deliver lunch. By 3:27 p.m., the ripple had started. Martin Kirby leaned forward. Devon, who owns this code? Devon didn't answer right away. Devon, Martin repeated, who holds the intellectual property? Devon reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it and held it so the screen faced the table. It showed an email. Subject line, IP Transfer Agreement, D. Hayes, pending execution. Sender, Feldman Legal Group LLP. Timestamp, 2:14 p.m., 64 minutes ago. I do. The room exploded. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then, everyone moved at once. Kyle Brennan stood. What the hell does that mean? Claudia Voss grabbed her phone. Hold on, everybody stop talking. Roger was already on his feet. Devon, this is completely inappropriate. We are in the middle of a contractual negotiation and you do not have the authority to— Actually, Devon said calmly, I do. Roger's face went red. You're an employee of Titan Grove Capital. Anything you create under our employment is company property under the Standard Invention Assignment Clause. I never signed one. Roger stopped. I never signed an invention assignment agreement, Devon repeated. I checked. My employment contract doesn't have one. And under Illinois law, specifically the Employee Patent Act 765 ILCS 1060, an employee retains ownership of any invention created outside the scope of their job duties, unless there's a written agreement stating otherwise. He looked around the table. My job description says I'm responsible for hardware troubleshooting, user account management, and network maintenance. It doesn't mention software development. Claudia's eyes narrowed. Show me the contract. Devin reached into his bag, a plain black backpack sitting against the wall, and pulled out a manila folder. He set it on the table and slid it toward her. Claudia opened it. The first page was a printout of an employment offer letter, dated 4 years ago. She read it silently, her expression hardening with every line. "This is real," she said quietly. "Yes, ma'am." Martin Kirby stood and walked over. He looked at the document over Claudia's shoulder. After a moment, he let out a low whistle. "Roger," Martin said, "did you know about this?" Roger's jaw worked. We were in the process of addressing certain administrative oversights." "Did you know," Martin said, his voice cold now, "before you brought 16 investors into this room to discuss a $400 million acquisition, that you don't actually own the software you're selling?" Silence. Kyle Brennan laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "This is insane." Jessica Tran, still near the door, had stopped typing. She was just staring. Claudia closed the folder and looked at Devin. "What do you want?" Devin took a breath. "I want 3 things. 1. Credit. My name in the documentation, the marketing materials, the patent filings, as co-creator." "Done," Claudia said immediately. "What else?" 2. A real role. Not IT support, senior engineer, lead architect, whatever title reflects what I actually do." "Done." "And 3. Equity. 0.6% of the post-acquisition valuation. 4-year vest, 1-year cliff." Claudia did the math in her head. "That's $2.4 million. "Yes, ma'am." Roger exploded. "This is extortion. This is negotiation," Martin cut in. "And it's your fault, Roger. You didn't do due diligence. You didn't verify ownership. You walked us into a landmine." He turned to Devin. "Kid, you got a lawyer?" "Yes, sir." "Good. You're going to need one." He looked at Claudia. "We need to verify everything he's saying. Com logs, employment records, contract language, IP filings." Claudia nodded. "Agreed." "Devin, we're going to need full access to your version control, any correspondence with Titan Grove about this, and any legal documentation you filed." "I have it all," Devin said. "I can send it tonight." Kyle Brennan sat back down, shaking his head. "How long have you been planning this?" 6 months. "Why now?" Devin looked at Roger. "Because 3 months ago, I asked for a promotion. I asked to be moved to the development team. I was told my role didn't qualify. I asked to be credited in the next product release. I was told that wasn't possible." He paused. "So, I hired a lawyer. I reviewed my contract, I filed for copyright protection on every module I'd written, and I waited." "For what?" Claudia asked. "For this. For a room full of people who'd actually listen." Claudia stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was small, but genuine. "Smart." Roger's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face went pale. He stood without a word and walked out of the room. The door closed behind him. Martin looked at the remaining investors. "All right, here's what's going to happen. We're postponing the deal close until we verify Devin's claims. If they check out, and I think they will, we renegotiate. Roger's out, Devin's in." He looked at Devin. "You good with that?" "Yes, sir." "Good." Martin extended his hand. "Welcome to the table, kid." They shook. The clock read 3:34 p.m., 11 minutes left, but the meeting was already over. Be honest, what would you have done at this point if you were Devin Hayes? Step in or stay silent? Share your thoughts in the comments. The room didn't empty right away. A few investors stood, stretching, checking phones, whispering to each other, but most stayed seated, watching Devin like he was a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. Claudia Vass pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "That's my direct line. You call me if anyone at Titan Grove tries to bury this, or bury you." Devin picked up the card. Heavy stuck, embossed letters. Claudia Vass, Managing Partner, Crestline Equity Partners. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly." Martin Kirby walked over and sat in the chair next to Devin. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes, sir." "Why didn't you quit? Why stay at a place that wouldn't promote you?" Devin was quiet for a moment. "Because I believed in what I was building, and I knew if I left, it would fall apart. The contracted devs didn't understand the architecture. The product team didn't understand the workflows. I was the only one holding it together." Martin nodded slowly. "That's called being indispensable, but it's also called being stuck." "I know." "So what changed?" "I stopped waiting for permission." Martin smiled. "Good answer." A soft voice came from near the door. "Excuse me?" Everyone turned. A young girl, maybe 9 years old, stood in the doorway, holding a pink backpack. She had brown skin, braids pulled into a ponytail, and bright, curious eyes. "Dad?" Devin's face changed instantly. The calm, controlled expression melted into something warmer. "Hey, Zoe, you okay?" Zoe stepped inside, looking around nervously at all the adults in suits. "Grandma dropped me off. She said you were almost done." "I am, sweetheart. Just a few more minutes." Zoe walked over and stood next to him. She looked up at the screen, still displaying rows of code. "Is this the work thing?" "Yeah." "Did it go okay?" Devin glanced at the investors, then back at his daughter. "Yeah, it went okay." Zoe smiled. "Good." Then, quietly, "Are they being nice to you?" The question hung in the air. Claudia Voss stood and walked over. She knelt down so she was eye level with Zoe. "Hi, I'm Claudia. What's your name?" "Zoe." "Zoe, your dad just did something really important. Did you know that?" Zoe shook her head. "He stood up for himself. That's hard to do, especially when you're the only one in the room who looks like you or thinks like you. But he did it anyway." Zoe looked up at Devin. "You did?" Devin nodded. "I did." "Cool." Claudia laughed. She stood and looked at Devin. "Take care of her. We'll be in touch." Martin Kirby added, 72 hours. We'll have an answer by then." Devin nodded. "Thank you." The investors began filing out. Jessica Tran stopped near the door and looked back at Devin. "For what it's worth, I've been in rooms like this for 6 years. I've never seen anything like that." "Good or bad?" She grinned. "Good. Definitely good." As the room emptied, Devin knelt down next to Zoe. "You hungry?" "Yeah." "Let's get pizza." "Can we get extra cheese?" "Always." They walked out together, hand in hand. Behind them, the conference room sat empty. Glass table, leather chairs, Chicago skyline stretching out beyond the windows. On the table, Devin's manila folder sat open. Next to it, Claudia's business card. And on the screen, still glowing, was a single line of code. Built by B. Hayes, September 2024. 71 hours later, Devin walked into a law office in downtown Chicago. It was a smaller firm, nothing like the glass towers where the investors worked, but it was respected. Feldman Legal Group specialized in employment law, intellectual property disputes, and contract negotiation. They'd represented Devin pro bono for the first 3 months, then switched to a contingency agreement when they realized his case had teeth. The lead attorney, a woman in her early 50s named Rachel Feldman, met him in the lobby. "They want to settle," she said. Devin blanked. "Already?" "Already." Crestline verified everything. Your commit logs, your employment contract, your copyright filings. They pulled Titan Grove's internal emails. Turns out Roger knew you didn't have an invention assignment agreement. He just hoped nobody would ask. Devin sat down slowly. "What are they offering?" Rachel pulled out a folder, thicker than the one Devin had brought to the pitch, and set it on the table between them. "Full IP transfer to the acquiring company. You get formal co-creator credit in all documentation, marketing, and filings. You get a senior engineering role, title negotiable, but they're offering lead platform architect. Salary $195,000, and equity." "How much?" 0.7% of post-acquisition valuation, 4-year vest, 1-year cliff. Based on the revised deal price of $387 million, that's $2.7 million. Devin was silent. "There's more," Rachel said. "Crestline is removing Titan Grove from the deal lead position. Roger Pemberton has been placed on administrative leave, and they're offering you a seat on the platform's advisory board post-acquisition. Devin looked at her. Why? Because they're terrified. If you walk away, the deal falls apart. And if you go public, if you talk to the press, file a lawsuit, or license the code to a competitor, Titan Grove's reputation implodes. She leaned forward. Devin, you hold all the cards. The question is, what do you want to do with them? Devin thought about it. He thought about Roger's dismissive wave in the conference room. He thought about 4 years of being invisible. He thought about Zoe asking, "Are they being nice to you?" "I want them to sign it," he said. "All of it. And I want it in writing that if they try to retaliate, if they blacklist me, badmouth me, or interfere with my career, they owe me triple damages under Illinois' whistleblower protection statute." Rachel smiled. Done. The deal closed 8 weeks later. The final price was $387 million, lower than the original target, adjusted for the IP renegotiation and the removal of Titan Grove as lead. Devin's equity stake, calculated at 0.7%, came out to $2.709 million, vesting over 4 years. He was also named lead platform architect at Cascade Growth Partners, the private equity firm acquiring the platform. His starting salary was $195,000, plus annual bonuses tied to client adoption metrics. On his first day, someone left a nameplate on his desk. Devin Hayes, lead platform architect. He took a picture and sent it to Zoe. She replied, "You're the best dad ever, ZZZ." But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks after the deal closed, Devin got an email from Claudia Voss. Subject: quick question. Devin, how would you feel about spinning the platform into its own company? Separate entity, separate cap table. You'd be CTO. 2% equity, fully vested in 3 years. Let me know. C. Devin stared at the email for a long time. Then he replied, "When do we start?" By the time the news broke publicly, the private equity world had already moved on to the next deal. But in certain circles, employment lawyers, tech workers, junior engineers grinding it out at companies that didn't see them, the story became legend. Bloomberg ran a piece 3 months later. The headline: "The IT guy who took down a $410 million deal and came out a millionaire." The article quoted Devin once, near the end. "I didn't do this because I wanted to blow things up. I did it because I wanted to build something that mattered, and I wanted credit for it." It was shared 14,000 times in the first week. Meanwhile, back at Titan Grove Capital, the fallout was swift. Roger Pemberton never returned from administrative leave. 2 months later, the company issued a terse press release announcing his departure to pursue other opportunities. No severance package was mentioned publicly, but internal sources said he'd been forced to forfeit unvested stock options worth over $800,000. Titan Grove also implemented a company-wide policy overhaul. The new protocol, titled Employee Innovation and Intellectual Property Recognition Policy, HR Code 62A, required mandatory invention assignment agreements for all technical staff regardless of title, annual IP audits conducted by external counsel, clear pathways for non-engineering staff to receive credit and compensation for technical contributions, whistleblower protections under Illinois Whistleblower Act 740 ILCS 174, and federal Dodd-Frank provisions 15 U.S.C. Section 78 U6. The policy was adopted by 3 other Chicago-based firms within 6 months. It became known informally as the Devin Rule. Devin, meanwhile, was thriving. At Cascade Growth Partners, he rebuilt the platform from the ground up. He added machine learning modules for predictive client behavior analysis. He integrated voice-activated portfolio updates. He built a mobile app that gave clients real-time access to their holdings. Client adoption increased by 74% in the first year. Compliance violations dropped by 83%. Operating costs fell by 41%. Claudia Voss called him into her office 8 months after the acquisition. "We're spinning it off," she said, "the platform, into its own subsidiary, You'll be CTO, build the team, set the vision, run the product roadmap. What's the equity? 2.5%, fully vested over 3 years. Devin thought for maybe 5 seconds. Let's do it. The subsidiary launched 11 months later. It was called Apex Financial Systems, a nod to the original contracted dev firm that had failed so spectacularly. Devin hired carefully. 2 junior developers, both women, both overlooked at their previous jobs. A product manager who'd been stuck in middle management for 7 years. A UX designer who'd been told she was not technical enough to work on enterprise software. He knew what it felt like to be underestimated. By the end of year 1, Apex had 14 clients and $5.8 million in annual recurring revenue. By the end of year 2, it had 47 clients and was valued at $81 million in a Series A funding round. Devin Hayes, the kid who used to fix printers, was now worth $3.1 million on paper, not counting his original equity from the Cascade acquisition. And he was just getting started. If you were in Devin Hayes' position, would you forgive and move on, or make sure they felt it? Be honest, let me know in the comments. 18 months after the deal closed, Devin got a call from an unexpected source. It was Martin Kirby, the grizzled investor who'd first suggested letting Devin run the demo. "I'm retiring," Martin said. Devin sat up. "Congratulations." "Don't congratulate me yet. I'm calling because I want you on my successor team." "You're what?" "I'm stepping back from active deal-making, but I'm setting up a mentorship fund for overlooked talent. Engineers, analysts, operators who get stuck in the wrong roles, people like you." Devin was quiet. "I want you to help me run it," Martin continued. "Part-time, advisory role. We find people, we fund them, we connect them to opportunities. Interested?" "Yeah," Devin said, "I am." "Good. First meeting's next month. I'll send details." Martin hung up. Devin sat there for a moment, staring at his phone. Then he smiled. 6 months later, the mentorship fund, called Threshold Ventures, launched with $18 million in committed capital from 5 limited partners. Devin was listed as a founding advisor. The fund's first cohort included a data analyst at a logistics company who'd built a route optimization algorithm that saved the company $4.2 million annually. She'd never been promoted. A junior accountant who'd automated 60% of his firm's compliance workflows using Python scripts. His manager had taken credit. A help desk tech who'd written a customer service chatbot that reduced ticket volume by 47%. She was still making $38,000 a year. Threshold gave each of them $100,000 in seed funding, legal support, and introductions to investors. All 3 left their jobs within 4 months. 2 of them launched startups. 1 joined a Series B company as head of engineering. Devin flew out to meet them in person at the end of the year. "How does it feel?" he asked. The data analyst, a woman named Priya, smiled. "Like I can finally breathe." Devin nodded. "Yeah, I know that feeling." Back at Apex Financial Systems, Devin implemented a policy of his own. Every employee, regardless of title, was required to sign a contract that included clear invention assignment language with fair compensation for any IP created, annual reviews that assessed actual contributions, not just job descriptions, a whistleblower hotline, anonymized and independently operated, equity grants for any employee whose work resulted in a patent, product feature, or measurable revenue impact. He called it the Fair Credit Framework. Within a year, 3 other fintech startups adopted similar policies. Devin didn't patent the framework. He open-sourced it. "If this helps even 1 person avoid what I went through," he told a reporter, "it's worth it." And then, 2 years after the conference room showdown, Devin got an email. Subject: "Thank you. Hi, Mr. Hayes. You don't know me, but I read about what you did at Titan Grove. I'm a junior dev at a SaaS company in Austin. I've been doing senior-level work for 2 years, getting paid junior wages, and being told I'm not ready for a promotion. Your story gave me the courage to document my contributions, hire a lawyer, and negotiate properly. Last week, I got the title, and the raise, and my name on the patents. Thank you. Aaron T. Devin read the email 3 times. Then he replied, "Congratulations, you earned it. Let me know if you ever want to talk. I'm happy to help. Devin." He closed his laptop and looked out the window. Chicago stretched out below, towers of glass and steel, the lake beyond, the late afternoon sun catching everything just right. He'd built something that mattered, and people knew his name. There's a particular kind of invisibility that comes with being underestimated. It's not the kind you choose. It's the kind that seeps in slowly, meeting after meeting, project after project, until you start to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe you're not good enough. Maybe your place really is in the corner, keeping the systems running while other people take the credit. Devin had felt that for years. He'd watched his code get deployed under someone else's name. He'd sat in meetings where executives presented features he'd built, calling them our team's work without ever mentioning who on the team had actually done it. He'd been thanked for keeping the lights on while the people who'd merely managed him got promoted. And the cruelest part, none of it was malicious. Roger Pemberton didn't wake up every morning plotting how to suppress Devin's career. The investors didn't consciously decide Devin wasn't worth listening to. The system just worked that way. People saw what they expected to see. An IT guy in a polo shirt was support staff, period. It didn't matter what he knew or what he built. The title defined the man. Until the man redefined the title. What Devin did in that conference room wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. He didn't blow up the deal to hurt anyone. He leveraged the truth to force recognition. And the truth was simple. He'd built something valuable, and he had the receipts to prove it. But here's the harder lesson, the one that makes people uncomfortable. Devin had to risk everything to be seen. He had to document everything, hire a lawyer, study the law, plan for months, and wait for the exact right moment. He had to be perfect, because if he'd been wrong about even one detail, one clause in his contract, one line of ownership, he would have been fired, blacklisted, and buried. That's what it cost him to be heard. And that's the quiet injustice of it. Devin shouldn't have needed a legal strategy to get credit for his work. He shouldn't have had to trap his employer in a conference room full of witnesses. He should have been able to walk into HR, show his contributions, and get promoted. But the system doesn't work that way for everyone. The people who fit the expected mold, the ones with the right degrees, the right background, the right look, they get the benefit of the doubt. They get mentorship. They get second chances. They get promoted on potential. The people who don't fit the mold, they have to be undeniable. Devin became undeniable, but it took years of unpaid overtime. It took swallowing his pride while others took credit. It took meticulous documentation, legal fees, and a willingness to burn bridges. And even then, even after he'd won, the victory was bittersweet. Because he knew there were hundreds, maybe thousands of people like him, stuck in the same position without the legal knowledge, or the leverage, or the sheer determination to fight back. That's why he started mentoring. That's why he open-sourced his framework. That's why he answered every email from strangers asking for advice. Because fairness shouldn't require a legal showdown. It should be the default. Devin learned something in that conference room, something that changed him. Documentation is power. Silence is complicity. And sometimes the only way to change a system is to make it impossible for the system to ignore you. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just a steady voice saying, "Actually, I built that." And sometimes that's enough. What lesson hits you the hardest in the story? Comment your thoughts. I read everyone. 3 years after the pitch, Devin stood in his apartment in Chicago's West Loop, packing boxes. He was moving, not far, just to a bigger place a few blocks north, one with an extra bedroom so Zoe could have her own space when she stayed with him on weekends. The new place had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the skyline that reminded him just a little of that conference room, but this time he was the one with power. His phone buzzed, a calendar reminder. Board meeting, Apex Financial Systems, 2 p.m. He smiled. He was running late, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel anxious about it. He grabbed his laptop bag and headed out. The Apex offices were in a converted warehouse in River North, exposed brick, open floor plan, standing desks scattered across 2 floors. It was the kind of space Devin had dreamed about working in when he was fixing printers at Titan Grove. Now he ran it. He walked in at 2:07 p.m. The board was already gathered in the glass-walled conference room on the 2nd floor. Claudia Voss, Martin Kirby, 2 other investors, and Devin's CFO, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Kara Chen who'd left a VP role at a Fortune 500 to join Apex. "Sorry I'm late," Devin said, setting his bag down. "Moving day." Claudia waved it off. "You're fine. Let's get started." The meeting ran for 90 minutes. Revenue projections, client pipeline, product roadmap. Devin walked them through the Q4 plan, new features, integrations, a partnership with a major wealth management firm that would triple their client base. When it was over, Martin lingered behind. "You're doing good work, kid," he said. "Thank you. I mean it. 3 years ago, you were stuck in a basement fixing Wi-Fi. Now you're running a company worth $80 million. That's not luck. That's execution." Devin smiled. "I had help. You earned it." Martin paused. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't spoken up that day?" Devin thought about it. "Every day. And? I'd still be there. Invisible, underpaid, bitter." Martin nodded. "A lot of people stay there. You didn't. That's the difference." He clapped Devin on the shoulder and left. That evening, Devin picked Zoe up from his mother's house. They got pizza, extra cheese as always, and headed back to his apartment. While Zoe did homework at the kitchen table, Devin opened his laptop. He had 17 unread emails. Most were routine, investor updates, vendor contracts, employee questions. But one stood out. Subject, "You changed my life." He opened it. "Mr. Hayes, my name is Latoya Williams. I'm a QA tester at a software company in Atlanta. For the past 2 years, I've been writing automation scripts that cut our testing time by 65%. My manager takes credit for it. I've asked for a promotion 3 times. I've been told no every time. I read your story. I hired a lawyer. I documented everything. Last week, I met with my CEO and showed him the commit logs. I start as senior QA engineer next month with a 40% raise and my name on the automation framework. Thank you for showing me it was possible. Latoya." Devin stared at the screen for a long time. Then he replied, "Latoya, congratulations. You earned every bit of that. If you ever want to talk or if I can help in any way, let me know. Keep building. Devin." He closed the laptop and looked over at Zoe. "Hey, kiddo." She looked up from her math homework. "Yeah? You know how I always tell you to stand up for yourself? Yeah? I want you to remember something. Standing up for yourself doesn't mean being loud. It doesn't mean being mean. It just means knowing your worth and not letting anyone make you forget it." Zoe nodded slowly. "Okay. You got it?" "I got it." Devin smiled. "Good." Outside, the Chicago skyline glowed against the dusk. Somewhere in that city, someone was working late, building something no one would credit them for. Somewhere, someone was being told they weren't ready. And maybe, just maybe, they'd read Devin's story and realize they didn't have to stay invisible. 2 years later, September 2029. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature in their weekend edition. The headline, "How One Coder's Legal Battle Changed Equity Practices in Private Equity." The article detailed how, in the 5 years since Devin's confrontation at Titan Grove, over 40 investment firms had adopted employee IP recognition policies. The changes weren't just cosmetic. They included mandatory invention assignment agreements with fair compensation clauses, citing 35 U.S.C. Chapter 100 patent law and state-specific labor statutes. Annual IP audits conducted by independent third parties. Equity grants for employees whose work resulted in measurable value creation. Whistleblower protections under Dodd-Frank Act, 15 U.S.C. Chapter 78 U-6, and state whistleblower statutes. The article quoted Claudia Voss. What Devin did forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. We were profiting off people we refused to see. That's not just bad ethics, it's bad business. The best ideas don't always come from the people with the fanciest titles. It also quoted a labor law professor from Northwestern. The Hayes case became a watershed moment. It showed that even in at-will employment states, workers have leverage if they understand IP law. It's changed how companies think about non-traditional contributors. Devin didn't do a full interview for the piece, but he provided a short statement. I didn't set out to change an industry. I just wanted credit for my work. If that helped other people stand up for themselves, then it was worth it. By 2029, Apex Financial Systems had grown into a $340 million company. It served over 200 wealth management firms, handling portfolios worth a combined $89 billion. Devin was still CTO, but he'd stepped back from day-to-day operations. He spent half his time running Threshold Ventures, the mentorship fund he'd co-founded with Martin Kirby. Threshold had funded 63 people in 5 years. 22 of them had started companies. 18 had joined leadership teams at established firms. 14 had filed patents. 3 had been acquired. The fund tracked one particular metric: average time from overlooked role to leadership position. The industry average was 9 years. For Threshold portfolio members, it was 18 months. One afternoon in September, Devin got a call from an unfamiliar number. Hello? Mr. Hayes, this is Professor Angela Reeves from Stanford Law School. I'm teaching a seminar on employment law and intellectual property. Would you be willing to come speak to my students? Devin paused. What would you want me to talk about? Your case, how you used the law to protect your work, how you negotiated from a position most people would consider powerless. Devin thought about it. When? November. We'd cover travel and accommodations. All right, I'll do it. Thank you. My students are going to learn a lot from you. That evening, Devin sat in his home office, the extra bedroom in his apartment now converted into a workspace, and pulled up an old file. It was the commit log from the Optics platform, the one he'd shown to the investors 5 years ago. He scrolled through it, reading the timestamps, the feature descriptions, the incremental improvements. June 2022, rebuilt API authentication layer, improved security by 91%. August 2022, automated compliance checks, reduced manual review time by 74%. November 2022, integrated machine learning forecasting, client retention up 28%. He'd built all of it, every line, every module. And now, finally, everyone knew. His phone buzzed, a text from Zoe, now 13 and in 8th grade. Dad, can you help me with my coding homework? I'm stuck on a loop. Devin smiled and replied, on my way. He closed the laptop, grabbed his jacket, and headed out. Outside, the city hummed with life. Somewhere in Chicago, someone was working late, building something brilliant. Somewhere, someone was being overlooked. But maybe, just maybe, they'd remember Devin's story, and they'd know they didn't have to stay invisible. Before we close, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation like Devin's, where you did the work but someone else got the credit? Where you built something valuable but weren't recognized for it? Share your story in the comments. You'd be surprised how many people have been through the same thing. And sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step to standing up for yourself. Drop your city or country below too. I love seeing how far these stories reach. Last week we had viewers from 43 countries. This community is global, and your voice matters here. And if you've got ideas for the next story, drop them in the comments. I read every single one, and I feature viewer suggestions regularly. Maybe your idea will be the next video. If stories like this move you, if they make you think, make you feel something, or remind you that fairness is worth fighting for, Subscribe to the channel. We are building a community of people who believe that justice isn't loud or flashy. It's steady, it's documented, and it's powerful. Hit that subscribe button and let's keep shining a light on the people who refuse to stay invisible. See you in the next one.